The Great Depression in 12 minutes, casual economics. Fuck it. Oh, 2.2 million views in a month? What the fuck? Wow. Brand new channel? Brand new channel? Dude, I kind of want to do this. I want to do this fucking make a new channel to prove it's not WWII type shit beat. And just make like a fucking animated like I want to talk about history and shit, but how do I do it on my main channel? It doesn't make sense. Just me. But it'd be my voice, so it would be everyone would know. Let's try it.
The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in modern history.
Yikes!
People went from parties, jazz music, and riches in the roaring 20s to losing their life savings and standing in bread lines.
What do you think it costs to get animation like this? Doesn't even look that hard. Not $5 for a 12-minute video. What do you think it costs for this video? Like if I wrote a script and I recorded it, what would it cost to get it animated? 1K, 5, 10K? If you're an animator and you think you could do a 12-minute video like this, not necessarily this style, but I'd be interested. I would be interested in the idea. I'd love to explore a format where it's not only me talking. Well, it's me talking, but with different visuals.
In the span of a few years. And the Depression wasn't just in America. Its impact spread across the world and ultimately led to the start of World War II.
Yikes!
But what exactly caused the Depression?
Was World War II the bad one? I have trouble remembering. I know that one of the world wars was awesome and everybody had a good time. And one of them was kind of sad. You guys know how like 80% of all wars in human history were based and everyone had a good time and everyone loved them? Well, it turns out there was one war where it was like, oh, this kind of sucks. And I think that was one of the world wars.
And what lessons can we learn from it? Let's start in 1918. World War I has just ended, and American soldiers are returning home having won the war. It feels good to be back. During the war, women had for the first time begun to enter the workforce, and with men returning now, the economy saw a post-war boom.
All right.
This economic boom, alongside a growing culture change, created...
With all these post-war booms, why don't we just have wars all the time to boost the economy? That was our first mistake. Cutie, you're anti-women in the workplace. That's a core political philosophy, is we got to take women out of the workplace. It's
the era known as the Roaring Twenties. Party! At this time in Detroit, Michigan, a man named Henry Ford would revolutionize transportation with the
famously really tolerant of Jewish people, Henry Ford. One of his biggest accomplishments. One thing he was big about is tolerance. So
Ford Model T car.
Before you bring up anything.
Facing huge demand for the car, his company introduced the process of the moving assembly line. This mass production dropped the car's price from $780 in 1910 to $200.
Yeah, their slogan used to be "Built Ford Tolerance." Yes. That's what it used to be. Back then, they had different priorities, okay? And it was about how tolerant you could be. And that shit was actually really based, okay? Thank you, Henry Ford, for that. And yes, later in life, he would play Han Solo in the movie Star Wars. A storied life. A very storied life for Henry Ford. Just a man that lived and breathed, you know?
$190 in 1924, making it the first inexpensive car for the masses. By 1927, the 15 millionth Model T would roll out of the factory.
Sheesh.
You get a car. You get a car. Everyone gets a car. Many companies would copy this assembly line process to mass-produce other inventions, including the radio, washing machine, and vacuum. With mass production of new products and improved advertising using the radio, the age...
I feel like this is going to sound a little silly, and it is, and I'm not really thinking it through. It was cool when one product, which is your phone, didn't do everything. It was cool when you would get a new music player. The iPod was a cool product. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this thing would do this. There would be like a gadget for everything. And there would something that would be new. I'm not really thinking this through, but I just remember how fucking cool the iPod was. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was cool. And now it's like all primarily through the phone, a lot of the new updates. Even the upgrade, this is going to sound really old, but even the upgrade from VHS to DVD was so cool. It was so cool. I remember being like, this is I'm living through the advancement of society. It's cool. VHSs were shitty. You had to rewind them, and it was lame. And then DVD was like, damn, I can pick a different chapter to start in. There's a bonus feature. If anything, we've regressed. If anything, we've regressed from the DVD. I will say that, because the DVDs used to have these menus, and you'd have a bunch of bonus features, and you have a bunch of shit. And now a movie comes out, I watch it on a streaming service, I don't own it, and there's no bonus shit. No, I don't fully believe what I'm saying. Just to be clear, I don't fully believe it, because I like the convenience of streaming. I probably wouldn't actually take this if I could press a button. But there is something lost. It's like, I like to argue for this because I do feel like there was something beautiful about it. Isn't buying a subscription cheaper than buying thousands of discs? Yes. Well, I mean, sort of. If you consider it as a fee you have to pay your entire life, then not really. You know, like, realistically, if your media diet includes Netflix, then you're always going to be paying. It's a tax. It's a bill you have to pay at all times. And you don't own it. So if you ever stop, you've lost all your... Now, obviously, piracy is cheaper than all this, but that was always the case. I'm more talking about for people who were trying to, like, be law-abiding. By the way, you know, I'm now a pirate. Not for any fucking reason other than that my wife is a huge pirate. My wife's fucking Blackbeard, dude. She just deleted all our apps that I was paying for, and now we're pirating everything. I used to happily pay for Prime, Netflix, HBO, Apple, all the fucking, and now we don't pay for any. Disney, we don't pay for any of them. It's the thrill. I miss the newspapers. Okay, again, as someone who reads the physical paper, I'm not the best person to ask about this. I am a bit dated in my ways, but I do think that there's a fair argument to be made that back when people got their news from reading a physical paper, they were more likely to understand what the fuck they were talking about. Like, the general society of people that followed the news would be more likely to understand what they were talking about in some way versus just AI summarized plus headline plus TikTok clip. The smell of ink is well worth it. Anyway, I'm not that big on it. Even sometimes I'll find myself, I'm at the cafe, I'm reading the FT physical edition. I'll get digitally bored. I'll take my phone out. I'll open the FT app and end up reading the same article I was reading physically. This has happened many occasions. Many occasions where I'm reading the exact same article digitally that I was reading physically. That's unhinged. You need help. That's unhinged and I need help because I'm reading an FT article digitally instead of physically. That's unhinged. I'm reading a full-fledged long-form article for fucking half an hour to 45 minutes. But because I need Jesus Christ in my life, holy fuck, I'm cooked. I don't think so. I don't trust your diagnosis. I'll be honest with you. I don't trust it.
Of consumerism had officially...
Where were we? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. We're in the 20s. Henry Ford assembly line rolls out an age of consumerism. They're making a bunch of shit assembly line. Okay. Everyone's getting new stuff. They're getting better vacuums, better cars, yada, yada, better radios.
Consumerism had officially begun. Everyone wanted the latest and greatest new product. To help with the demand, banks began giving out loans more freely to people so that they could buy these new products on credit with money they didn't yet
Always
have.
works out. Always works out.
Times were good. People were partying, there was jazz music, and a spirit of social liberation.
How about
Good to
that?
see you at the party, old sport. Prohibition had started in 1920, but meant little to this new generation. The parties were bigger, the morals were looser, and Wall Street became the place to be.
Prohibition famously
From
worked really
1921
well.
to 1929, the US stock market increased sixfold.
Nice.
Driven by the post-war boom, easy credit, and all the demand for new consumer products.
Nice.
As the public learned about these incredible returns from the stock market, everyone began putting money in and talking about it more. This created a snowball effect, where as the stock market continued to go up, people began to blindly sink all their savings into stocks, and some even took out loans,
All right.
which further drove prices up.
All right.
When people believe no price is too high for a stock, that can be a warning sign that the price is no longer.
And yet, famously, it never stopped going up. The video ends here, and that's what happened. Everyone found out that stocks were free money. Everyone put their money in, and they all got rich. And to this day, it's worked for everyone to have a life of leisure and productivity. It was a great invention that we found in the 20s, and ever since then, we've been partying. How awesome is that?
Longer based on fundamentals, and may have been driven up to irrational levels.
Nah.
Although stock prices were reaching new highs, something.
How many mega cap companies from back then are still on top of their game? It's actually an interesting question. I would assume very few, to be honest. Ford is a big company back then, is not a powerhouse now. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Top 10 companies by year. Top 10 companies in 1928. Let's see which of these companies are still around and like powerful. Standard Oil, no. General Motors, still around, not powerful, not number one, number two. Ford Motor, still around, not very powerful. U.S. Steel, still around, very weak, about to get bought by the Japanese. Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Corporation, doesn't exist. Swift & Co. doesn't exist. Sears is dead. General Electric, basically dead. Western Electric, don't think it exists. Chrysler, got merged, not very big. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything else is much around. Pretty much all gone. GE is fine, but I mean, what I'm saying is none of these companies are still the powerhouses that they were. Same thing with, the biggest companies when I was a kid, when they were like, not in the fucking Stone Age, but in like the 90s. When I remember growing up and the biggest companies in the world were all like, it was like oil companies and, no, I'm thinking of pre-tech bubble. Yeah, it was Walmart, ExxonMobil, AT&T, General Electric, still Sears actually. Wow. GM, dude, in 1995, the middle of the 90s, the biggest three companies in America were General Motors, Ford, and ExxonMobil. That's crazy because none of those guys are close now. I mean, Exxon's still big, but yeah, I'm like the biggest tech company in 1995 is like, I'm scrolling. The Coke, Pepsi. There's not a tech company on here. The biggest tech company in 1995 is HP, Hewlett Packard at 22. I'm sorry. I guess IBM at 7. I guess IBM. Exxon has grown a ton since 1995. All companies on this list have grown in terms of, well, not all of them, but most of them have. It's not about growing. It's about the relative scale. Exxon is no longer top 3 is what I'm trying to say. Exxon was top 3. Now it's not. Was it Microsoft around then? It was, but Microsoft didn't become a massive, top 10 company until the late 90s into the tech bubble. At which point it has not left, I don't think, our top 10. Once you get Apple in the top 10, it hasn't left. It's been around. Interesting that most of these companies that seem so dominant aren't around a few decades later. Or not around, but they've lost their top spot. What's IBM doing now? I think IBM's on a bit of a bounce back, right? I think IBM's on a bit of a bounce back. They do some AI stuff. I mean, still like corporate tech solutions. Yeah, it's not bad. Working on quantum computers, I guess. Anyway, well, back to the video. Sorry, I was distracted. These are the big companies.
Although stock prices were reaching new highs, something wasn't right.
What?
By the mid-1920s, the economy and demand for products had slowed drastically. With Europe still recovering from the aftermath of World War I, and few countries being able to afford the new consumer items, global trade was stalling. This didn't matter as people were still overwhelmingly optimistic and expected the stock market would continue to see record yearly performances each year.
Hell yeah.
Extreme greed and unrealistic fantasy filled the air. With margin, people could even buy stocks for only 40 to 10% of the actual stock
Hell
price,
yeah!
and then pay off their loan when the stock sold for large profits. I would like to take out a loan. Sure, what for? A house, a business, a farm? To buy stocks. Fine by me, here you go. By 1929, 40% of US consumer debt was being used to purchase stocks.
Dude, that's crazy.
And in that same year, the US had just elected
That's actually crazy. That's crazy. 40% of our debt towards stocks? That is not the case now. People are gambling on stocks on debt, but it's not 40% of all consumer debt. That's crazy.
was being used to purchase stocks. And in that same year, the US had just elected a new president, Herbert Hoover.
Yeah, now our debt's on pizza and student loans. on private taxis for burritos and student loans, dude. That's the...
Who famously said, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in the history of any land."
The final triumph over poverty. It's so interesting. Damn, Smith got rocked. Holy shit, dude. Holy shit, Smith got fucking rocked. Damn, Hoover about to enter a golden age, huh?
President Herbert Hoover, who famously said, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in the history of any land. The poorhouse is vanishing from among us." To many people, a skyrocketing
Oh, he was joking. He was actually sus.
any land. The poorhouse is vanishing.
He actually knew the poorhouse was coming back hard, but it was a little reference for the future. That's very smart. That's very smart. That's good. He knew he was going to vent the economy.
From among us. To many people, a skyrocketing stock market was a sign of a healthy, booming economy. But things were about to take a dark turn. Catastrophe would hit. On October the 24th, 1929, a day that became known as Black Thursday, the stock market would see heavy liquidation, with a record 12.9 million shares sold.
Buy
and
the
the
dip!
entire stock market fell
Buy
11%.
the dip!
This day marked the beginning of the Great Depression, and the following week there would be Black Tuesday, where the market fell 12%, with a record-breaking 16.4 million shares
Buy that
sold.
dip.
Eventually, in the span of 2 weeks, stocks had lost about a third of their value. People who had borrowed money to invest were crushed, and many people lost their life savings. However, the worst was yet to come. The common belief is that the stock market crash caused the Great Depression, but this is not entirely true. The stock market triggered a recession, but the real cause of the Great Depression was that many banks had extended too many bad loans and were speculating too much. At this time, many US banks were small and independent shops that lent.
But thankfully, after this event, banks learned their lesson, turned their lives around, and stopped making subprime loans. They knew that loans that couldn't be paid back were toxic to an economy, and so they reined it in. We never had that problem again.
Lent out a large amount of their assets to people for stock market speculation. As the stock market crashed, these banks went out of business overnight. There was no...
All the banks watched a Caleb Hammer video. And they said, I don't want to be on this content. I don't want to be made fun of it.
deposit insurance at the time. So if a local bank closed its doors, people lost their money. With headlines of many banks shutting down, people began to panic and pull their savings from healthy banks. This created bank runs on otherwise healthy banks that had to turn around and try to get all their customers' money all at once. This became a serious problem when in New York City, a false rumor started that the Bank of the United...
Damn, it had to feel so hella good to be in the front of the line of a bank run. You see a huge amount of people behind you, and you're in the front of the line, and you get your shit out. They give you your money, and you like have it, and it's got to feel fucking sweetest relief, dude. Got mine, because you know the guys in the back are screwed. You know that. You get mugged immediately? Nah, not me. I have aura.
States refused to sell a man's stock. This was enough to cause over 25,000 people to crowd the bank, and by the end of the day, $3 million had been withdrawn from the bank. Fear was in the air,
Chump change.
and worried of a larger bank run they couldn't handle, the Bank of the United States closed its doors and asked the state to take over the bank's assets. Soon after, the bank failed to get support for a short-term loan to stop the bank run and would ultimately...
Atrioc, you should have stopped the Great Depression? Nah, bro, I was a problem. I was a menace. In 1929, I was a menace, dude. I was borrowing so much money to gamble on stocks. I was going on I got panicked really easily. I went on bank runs instantly. I was walking around screaming in the streets, "Get your money out of the bank, it's gone, they're gonna take it all!" I panicked quick. I was starting bank runs left and right.
close its doors for good. It accounted for a third of the total $550 million deposits lost in the Depression. This sent shockwaves across the banking industry, and many banks began to call in loans and sell assets in order to stay liquid. 1/3 of banks in America would ultimately fail in this time period.
Okay.
Hey Joe, I just sold my car and have a few bucks now to pay you back. Which bank are you with again?
Are you crazy? Not a chance I'm leaving my money in any of those banks again.
With people choosing to hold their money outside of banks, the money supply in the US declined 31% from 1929 to 1933. And deflation has devastating effects on an economy. By causing the value of money
Makes
to
your
go
weed
up,
cheaper, I'll tell you
it
that.
reduces consumers' willingness to spend money, discourages investment, and increases the burden for those in debt. All of this leads to wages and income falling. And through this all, the Federal Reserve stood back, allowing this money supply contraction and the banking failures to happen without any intervention. A crucial mistake that has been widely criticized for making the Depression
Free
much
coffee
worse
and
than it
donuts
needed
for
to
the
be.
unemployed.
Through all of this, US President Herbert Hoover had no idea how to fix this and would largely be blamed for the lasting duration of the Depression.
Poor Hoover.
Following the initial stock market crash, there was a growing sentiment for isolationist and protectionist policies. In 1930, he passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act to protect US farmers and other industries from foreign competitors. It increased...
And that solved it. If you can believe it, that fucking solved it. It's fucking beautiful. That's what he was a visionary. He realized that by restricting trade, he could drive up the American economy, and it worked. It fucking, what a brilliant bastard, it worked. And to this day, liberals have tried to keep his brilliant ideas hidden behind lock and key until thankfully my God King Lord Savior Donald J. Trump, salute, finally unearthed the ancient tomes 100 years later and brought it back. And now, finally, we have saved this fucking great nation.
Increased tariffs on foreign imports to the US by about 20%, which then
what did you
immediately
say?
led to 25 countries retaliating and putting their own tariff.
Gave us a banger, though? What is this? What is this? What is this?
Ragged, hungry, homeless. Today we're living in a shanty. Today we're scrounging for a meal. Today I'm stealing coal for fires. Who knew I could steal?
Is Annie set during the Great Depression?
Winter in the tropics.
I spent my summers at the shore.
We're doing musical kid reacts.
Throw away the papers.
I'm going to say something maybe embarrassing culturally. I thought Annie was, I feel like I've only seen the Annie remake set in like New York. Like New York in like the 1990s or something. Which Annie have I seen? I feel like, I think I saw the 2014 one with Jamie Foxx. Yeah, I think this is the only one I've seen. And Cameron Diaz. This is the only Annie I know, but this is not Great Depression. Next movie night, original Annie. I mean, and then the only reason I know Annie, the original, existed is because of Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z. Wait, I want to hear the part where they mentioned Herbert Hoover in this song.
We don't anymore. We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover, for really showing us the way. We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover.
this is what depressions are like? The kids all become musically talented. They're poor, but they sing fun songs. That's not so bad. It's crowd theater. That seems fun. We should have a Great Depression again. Maybe this is what Trump wants. Maybe Trump's trying to bring whimsy back to America. A little bit of whimsy, a little bit of, musical spirits. That's why it was called the Great Depression. Yeah, it was great because of how fun it was. Because of how good the times were economically. Anyway, I did not know that. The Annie in the Depression story. I don't know. They mentioned Herbert Hoover by name.
Tariffs on American immediately led to 25 imports to the other industries from
tariffs.
foreign competitors.
Tariffs.
It increased tariffs on foreign imports to the US by about 20%, which then immediately led to 25 countries retaliating and putting their own tariffs on American goods.
Yikes.
Global trade would plummet even further from this, declining 66% worldwide from 1929 to 1934. Global trade was a relatively small piece of the American economy at the time, but this policy only made things worse. In total, the Great Depression would last over...
It's a good thing global trade isn't a much bigger part of the American economy nowadays, and therefore amplifying the problem of these tariffs. That's good. We make everything at home now. It's one of the big lessons we had of the Great Depression is that we should make everything at home, and now we do.
See, only made things worse. In total, the Great Depression would last over 10 years and mark the worst economic downturn in the history of the modern world. The Dow Jones would fall 90% from its high in 1929, and many lost their jobs as companies shut down en masse. 9 million savings accounts were wiped out. Over 9,000 US banks had failed. Industry halted, and unemployment in the US reached 24.9%, its highest point in history. To make matters worse, there was a period of severe dust storms in the middle of the US that caused drought,
That was a
high
big
winds, and hurt many farms in what became known as the Dust Bowl, the worst man-made ecological disaster in American history. As farming in the US slowed down, and with 1/3 of Americans still in agriculture, this would have massive consequences. Homelessness and breadlines became a common sight.
Someone said, why didn't they just use sprinklers? Dude. You fucking solved it. Damn, I can't believe they didn't think of that. You should have been there, bro. You should have been there.
In America, there would be 34 million people without any income. Shantytowns began appearing across the country and got the nickname Hoovervilles after the now disgraced president. Could it get any...
When a huge amount of people are homeless in your country and they name their shantytowns after you, it's not a good sign for a president. That's a pretty big L. It's kind of like Clancyville in a way. Yeah. We're going to be calling them Clancyvilles pretty soon. Clancyville's prosperous, though. It has the illusion of prosperity. Clancyville's very Pyongyang coded. It's very North Korea, dude. You look around and everything looks built and beautiful, but it's very much a facade. The underbelly is not good. They don't show the slums of Clancyville.
Worse? In 1932, the US elected President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who promised drastic changes and action to get the country out of the Depression. With the New Deal program, for helping the needy, he established a minimum...
Hey, Atrioc, genuinely curious. 75% don't have jobs. How to visualize how bad it was. Still a huge majority, right? Listen, 1 in 4 people looking for jobs not being able to get one is horrendously bad. It's like the depths of a bad depression. And that has many knock-on effects. So, right, if you are offering a job, let's say I have a factory and I want to hire 5 people. Well, that means there's hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and I can give them the lowest possible wages. Because if they don't want it and they walk, I can get someone else. So the jobs that do remain are extremely low wage. And I can work them longer and harder because there's no competition.
Wage, overtime pay, unemployment insurance, and a social security program. As for major banking reforms, he enacted federal deposit insurance on bank deposits to help prevent bank runs.
Is it a genuine question? Why doesn't buying the dip stop a company stock from tanking? Well, do you mean you specifically? If everyone did it, then that would stop it. But what's happening is more people are selling than buying. So you buying the dip is a smaller drop in a bigger ocean.
And he also added the Securities and Exchange Commission for better reporting and scrutiny on public companies. FDR's New Deal programs helped to stabilize the banking industry and restore the public's confidence. However, it would still take several years for the US economy to fully bounce back, with other countries around the world having also suffered from the Great Depression.
Yeah.
This led to the rise of extremist governments, and World War II would begin just a few years later in 1939. It wasn't until the
Dude, it really is fucking crazy how there's many causes, but how much you can blame the French specifically. Dude, for how bad things got in Germany. And I just want to be specific about it. After World War I, the French, more than anyone else, demand reparations from Germany in the Treaty of Versailles. They demand like extreme, impossible to pay back reparations. Everybody signs the Treaty of Versailles. It's looked down upon pretty quickly, but the French are the ones that keep pushing and keep enforcing. They keep demanding more money out of Germany. Then Germany can't pay. So the first payment is due. It's like fucking 12 billion marks or whatever. It's a million. The inflation, I don't know the number, but a lot of marks, right? Deutschmarks. And Germany can only pay a third of it. They just don't have the fucking money. So what France does is they invade Germany. This is between World War I and World War II. They invade Germany and steal a bunch of coal mines here. They take a bunch of coal mines and they try to, yeah, this is a fucking true story. It's deeply unpopular among everybody. And so, you know, in Germany, obviously the far rightish part, the Hitler-like parties are like, we're getting invaded. We're paying endless reparations. By the way, at this time, confidence in the fucking Deutschmark goes to fucking zero. So you get the Weimar level of inflation where it's like money printing out the wazoo. You know, $1 at the beginning of all this is worth like 7,000 marks. By the end of it, it's worth like 7 trillion. You know, it's just fucking wheelbarrows of it. It's fucking, and so it's not, you know, there's a lot of factors. Again, the Great Depression alone is a problem. This is not even the Great Depression included. But it is funny that if you really look into it, France was the one constantly pushing to force Germany to pay more than it could, which completely destabilized their fledgling Weimar government and made them go out of control on spending, which is just ironic that France would then later be invaded because of this. So it's all France's fault? No, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, France had their own debts. It's a complex web, bro. I'm not saying it's all France's fault. I think it's just under-discussed how France specifically, out of all the countries in World War I, is the one most demanding of reparations beyond all good sense, and was the one willing to cross the invasion line militarily when they didn't get paid back. What I'm saying is it's France's fault 100%.
would begin just a few years later in 1939. It wasn't until the start of World War II in 1939 that the Great Depression truly ended. It was only at this time that the unemployment rate fell below 10%, and the US saw vast stimulus to support war efforts. Economists still argue how much intervention is needed to solve an economic disaster and the effect of the New Deal program. Many of the lessons learned from the Great Depression are still used in the modern day, including the need for a small, stable amount of inflation to boost consumer spending and business investment, an increased role in government spending, and the assistance from the government to boost the economy when a recession occurs.
This is
By
all
learning from the
classic Keynesianism, and there's some solid truth to it, but I'm not going to go so into this video. I'll just say that all three of these things are part of Keynesianism, and Keynes is extremely smart, clearly smarter than fucking me. And the only thing that's not mentioned is that it all comes with a caveat that once times are good, that's when we cut back on all this. We cut back on the spending. We start saving like crazy because there will be a recession in the future we need to save for. So Keynesianism of all of this, whether you agree with it or not, requires a fourth step, which is like, okay, once we get out of the recession, we take great pains to save and be ready for the future. And we never do that part. That part does not happen.
the modern day. including the need for a small, stable amount of inflation to boost
He was 6'6" He was in the wrong economy. Keynes was 6'6" and apparently fucking like crazy. Dude, I just read this biography of Keynes, dude, that we're gonna do for the book club. There's parts in that book where it's like fucking and sucking, dude. That's crazy, dude. Bro is fucking, sucking, blowing, jerking. Dude, he's gay for the first third of the book. Then he finds this ballerina girl that he falls in love with. This, I mean, it's not a fictional book. It's a true book. And it's like she knew he was gay, but wanted him to fall in love with her. So she wore men's pajamas. And then they're like directly reading some letters they wrote to each other about how, like, you know, he used to be gay, but they found ways to make it work using their hands and mouths. It's graphic, dude. And like, I'm telling you, 95% of the book is about the fucking economy. Not the fucking economy. Actually, 95 is about the economy and 5% is about the fucking economy. 95 is about the economy. It's like, it's about post-World War I economic troubles and how that led to World War II and debates about the gold standard and, you know, and then it'll just have like this letter from Keynes, like, I want to be inside you. Just like some crazy shit. It's very, 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 very interesting, funny read. I gotta be honest with you. Anyway, that was his big takeaway in this insanely insane economic period. And it wasn't truly followed, you know?
consumer spending and business investment, an increased role in government spending, and the assistance from the government to boost the economy when a recession occurs. By learning from the past, we can better understand our current economic system and see any potential dangerous parallels in the future. In the end, it was greed that drove people to believe that there was no price too high for a stock and made many banks take on bad loans. And just like all bubbles, an overinflated market always sees the same ending of a painful crash.
Nah.
If you enjoyed this,
Nah. Wrong. Stocks always go up, dumb shit. Stupid fucking video. Anyway, long react, but good video. Shout out to Casual Economics. I did enjoy that. And I do kind of want to make a video like this. I would love to find an animator. I think it'd be cool.